Welcome to my channel. My name is John Samuel Pickwick. Next spring I will turn 27. Only my grandmother and my wife call me Johnny. My father, Robert, used to do the same when he was alive. I don't know why I'm named John, but Samuel is after my grandfather. My parents were born on the same day. By a strange coincidence, they died on the same day 22 years apart. My mother, Evelyn, was 22 when she passed away. Since I was only a few months old at the time, I have no memory of her. No one ever talked about her. My father died on a deserted stretch of highway. His car veered off the road and crashed into a tree. He was under the influence of alcohol but not drunk. They think he might have fallen asleep, as there were no skid marks. They were never able to determine exactly why he ended up on that highway. Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa raised me at Grandma's house until I turned 8. When Dad finally saved enough money, he bought his own house. That's where I've been living ever since. The house is in a typical rural setting, one of those developments where every third house is the same. Dad passed away 4 years ago while I was in college. He had a restless soul. Dad wasn't one to say, "I love you," but he always sought me out and gave me a big hug when he got home from work. I don't remember a single day when he didn't smell like whiskey. However, we never had a bottle of alcohol in the house. Even though he spent a lot of time in his favorite pub, I really don't think he had a drinking problem. His photos still hang on the pub's walls from all the years he was the darts champion. Dad drove a truck and knew almost everyone in town. When he was sick, neighbors would come by with soup and elixirs. Dad didn't believe in painkillers, so the witch's brews, as he called them, were the only remedies he accepted for his ailments. I wasn't so lucky. If I got sick or was in pain, he would take me to the doctor to get a shot in the butt. I learned not to complain. Dad loved playing rugby and so did I. No matter how rough rugby was, if I complained about an injury, he would tease me. "Let me know what size dress you need, so I can buy one for you, Joan." I don't ever remember us throwing a party. Dad was a loner and had a very small circle of friends. It was unusual for him to see the same woman twice. Attempts to set him up on dates were fruitless. When Dad passed away, Grandma paid for a beautiful headstone. Robert Pickwick, Evelyn Pickwick, loving parents of John Samuel Pickwick. I had never been to my mother's grave until we buried Dad. That I have a degree in civil engineering. I work in the city on road improvement projects. I didn't initially plan to work on roads, but I was inspired by a few presentations during my sophomore year of college. I interned with the city between my junior and senior years. The timing was perfect, as one of the longtime employees was retiring around the time I graduated. That I married my high school sweetheart, Mary, and we have a 4-month-old son, whom we named Robert Samuel. Mary and I kept in step throughout high school. I messed it all up by sleeping with a girl who was known to sleep with everyone. You know how high school boys are terrified of graduating as virgins. There were a lot of tears, since I was heading off to college and Mary and wasn't. We just broke up. We'd say hi whenever we ran into each other during the holidays. After graduating, I moved back home, and about a week later, I found Mary and on my porch. "I'd still like to see if there's any magic left between us," she said. We began the slow process of reconciliation. I learned that Mary and had her own house in town. Her father had accepted a job a few hours away. Her parents moved shortly after Mary and graduated from high school. Mary and worked as an accountant at a clothing store downtown. After a few dates, it became perfectly clear that there was definitely some good chemistry between us. She wasn't a virgin, and I had had my fair share of experiences in college. We never talked about the details. That was all in the past. Our courtship lasted less than 6 months before I proposed to her. We waited a few years before deciding to have a child. Mary and worked up until 10 days before giving birth. That I'm your typical 6 foot, 200-pound, out-of-shape guy. Mary and is petite, barely 5 feet tall, and hardly weighs 100 pounds. She's athletically built, and because she's so light, she moves gracefully. I had never experienced anything like that before, and I enjoyed it. The way she moved was impressive, and she always kept things exciting. She's a firecracker in the bedroom and never says no to me. It's not about what you have, but how you use it. One of her favorite role-playing games is when I sneak up on her in the kitchen and press her against the table. I disguise my voice with a low growl while teasing her. It's not really a fantasy about violence, more like a playful act of submission. I lift her up and lay her face down on the kitchen table. There's been more than one occasion where she's enjoyed it. This little indulgence was put on hold when Mary Ann became pregnant. As her due date approached, she started to resemble a water balloon with legs, as she jokingly described herself. She hated how she looked and couldn't understand how I could still love her when she felt so swollen. There was nothing I could say to calm her fears, as her hormones were all over the place. My engineering degree certainly didn't prepare me for how to soothe her delicate state of mind. Robert Samuel wrapped his tiny fingers around mine. I would do anything for him. Mary Ann truly enjoys being a mother. We've already planned to grow our family as soon as Robert turns 1. I earn enough from my job to comfortably support our lifestyle. Mary Ann is very self-conscious about her figure. She's always wanted a bigger chest. Right now, since she's breastfeeding, they're bigger than usual. There's a guy who lives next door, and he seems to hang around our house a lot. Charlie just finished high school and does odd jobs whenever he can find them. He's always asking if we have any tasks he could help with. I find him a bit unsettling. He's a big guy. About a week before Christmas, our marriage took a serious hit. When I came home, I found Mary Ann sitting on the couch, crying. "I'm so sorry, Johnny. I didn't want this to happen. I'm so sorry, Johnny." "Mary Ann, what are you sorry for? Tell me what happened." Through her sobs, she said, "I was unloading groceries, and one of the bags ripped. Charlie was nearby and started helping me pick things up. Even though I told him I could handle it, he carried a few bags into the kitchen. When I turned my back, he pressed me against the counter. He did the same thing you do when we play that game. I think he's been watching us." I felt trapped. I was scared and confused, but I couldn't speak. He laid me face down on the kitchen table and I felt him cross a line. "Was it rape? Did you enjoy it too?" "I'm sorry, I didn't say anything." "No, I didn't enjoy it. It all happened so fast. I was scared." "You still haven't answered me. Was it rape?" Mary Ann didn't answer. She shook her head. "That's just great. So, anytime you're scared, you'll just drop your panties and let strangers take you." "Johnny, no, it wasn't like that at all. I didn't know what to do. I just froze." "How about screaming, kicking, and scratching?" "Johnny, it was a mistake. I should have done all that. I love you. Please don't hate me." "Why did you stop him from finishing? How long did you two enjoy yourselves?" "Johnny, it wasn't fun at all. I was numb." Robert started crying, so I broke free, pushed Charlie away, and locked myself in the bathroom. I've probably showered 10 times since then. Too bad our marriage didn't start crying. Maybe you could have saved it. I'm gonna stay at Grandma's for a few days. "Johnny, no, don't leave. I need you. I want to be your wife. Please don't go. I love you. Please." Her tears and pleading won't stop me. I had the urge to punch the wall. Nothing in my life had ever felt more terrifying. During rugby practice, I told my buddies what was bothering me. Lots of pats on the back and attempts to cheer me up, but the pain remained. A few days later, while we were warming up before a game, one of the guys pulled me aside. "John, Charlie had a little accident and what a world we live in, he got kicked while he was down. Seems a couple of guys gave him about 100 kicks with steel-toed boots. He's in St. Rose Hospital now. Might never be any little Charlies. You guys are the best." After the game, I went home. Mary Ann started crying and begging. "I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I love you. Please don't leave me. Please. I'm not ready to talk." I took a shotgun shell, wrote Charlie on it, and slipped it into my pocket. I found Charlie's hospital room. During the attack, he had tried to protect his precious jewels with both hands. His hands were no match for the steel-toed boots of the rugby players. Both of his hands were in casts, and he had several tubes connected to him. When he saw me, his blood pressure started to rise, matching his growing fear. I showed him the shotgun shell. "Charlie, I'm not going to hurt you today. See your name on this shell. If I ever find out that you so much as think about Mary, and your mouth will be full of what's inside this little thing." Am I making myself clear, Charlie? He nodded several times in agreement. His blood pressure was alarmingly high as I left the room. I stopped by the pub to drown a few sorrows. Grandma scolded me when I got to her place. "Johnny, open your heart. Give her a chance. Don't wait too long. Please. I'll need a few more days, Grandma." I hugged her and went to bed. In the morning, I found Grandma sitting at the kitchen table with a box of tissues. She had taken down a photo of my dad and was staring at it. It didn't look like she had slept at all that night. "Are you okay, Grandma? The holidays are hard. Have you thought about what I said?" "Yes. I'm still not ready. I'll see you in the evening." I repeated the same routine as yesterday, headed to the pub, got lectured when I returned to Grandma's house, and went to bed. I woke up on Christmas Eve and found Grandma in the kitchen again. She looked upset. The tissue box was empty, and she was staring at a picture of my dad. It seemed like she was mumbling something, but I couldn't make out the words. "Good morning, Grandma. Anything going on in town? I've got the afternoon off today." "Johnny, have you made your decision yet?" "Not yet. Open your heart, Johnny. It was a mistake, maybe a big one, but still a mistake." "Do I need to remind you about some of the big mistakes you made? How is this any different from you and that girl in high school? I just hope you don't wait too long. You're as stubborn as your father." "Grandma, we're married now. It's completely different. Mary and was already wearing your engagement ring back then. Let me tell you what's changed. Now you're the one dealing with the sting of betrayal. When it was her feelings, it wasn't a big deal, but now that it's your feelings, well, it's different, isn't it? Don't wait too long, Johnny." She started crying again. I kissed her on the forehead and left. I found myself at the pub around dinner time. There weren't many people there, just a few coming and going. I felt really down. God, how I miss Mary and little Robert. I think I've already decided what to do. One more sip of pride. I washed it down with whiskey. I know alcohol isn't the answer, but I'm pretty sure milk and water aren't either. "Hey man." He reached out his hand. "You look like I feel." "My name's Bobby. I've been watching you for a while. Mind if I join you?" I looked up and saw a guy around my age, maybe a little younger, with empty eyes and a blank expression. There was a faint smell of whiskey on his breath. "Sure. I didn't notice you," I said, shaking his hand. "My name's John. Let me guess, your wife cheated on you like mine." I nodded. "Don't people live here, Johnny? Christmas should be spent with family." "That's true. I'm John. But I never knew my mom. She died when I was a baby, and my dad passed away 4 years ago." "What about you, Bobby?" "Well, if you're John, then I'll be Robert. Both of my parents are still alive. I'm alive too until I figure out how to raise a kid." "Johnny, I found out a few months ago." "What about you?" "I'm John. Found out last week. My lady screwed up at a party and ended up having sex. At least she felt guilty and broke down after a few days." "What about yours?" "My neighbor made a move on her and she didn't stop him. She broke down that night. Let me guess. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I love you. Don't leave me." "Yeah, all of that. There's probably a script they all follow. I'm telling you, Johnny, I was brutal. I made her tell me everything, down to the smallest detail. How she loved him, pleased him, loved him again. She was beside herself with grief. I didn't back down. Told her I'd probably divorce her. I hear you. I haven't filed yet, but I'm losing my mind thinking about it. I should have calmed down, but I couldn't chew and swallow that last bit of pride. That's the part that hurts the most. I'm telling you, Johnny." Her eyes were full of tears. "She used to work here as a waitress, and the guys were always hitting on her. I still carry her picture with me." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He knew exactly where the photo was. It was wrinkled, but you could tell she was a beauty. "This was taken a couple of years ago. Still my favorite. You never got back together with her." "No, I was too stubborn. She made a mistake, and I would have forgiven her. But I waited too long. She wrote me a note and left. The only thing I have to remember her by is our child." That he opened his wallet again, rummaged through it, and pulled out a photo of a woman holding a child. "I can't believe she left you with the child." We were all shocked. She loved him so much. It didn't make any sense. "I can't bring myself to hold the boy. He reminds me of her." "Robert, that's exactly why you should hold him. Because he reminds you of her." He opened his wallet again, rummaged through it and pulled out an envelope, folded in half. He carefully unfolded it. The front had, Bobby, written in a woman's handwriting that he gently took out the letter and pushed it toward me. Her handwriting was elegant and neat. Bobby, I'm so sorry. I'll never forgive myself for this. I can't live without you. With love, Evie. His eyes misted over and mine did too. The heartbreak was clear on his face. Do you ever talk to her? I tried. My mom helps me with the boy. Like you, he'll never know his mother. The boy meant the world to her. Don't you think there's a chance you two could be together again? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. He flashed it in front of me. It was a picture of a headstone. Now she lives here. That was her final note. She went to her grave thinking I didn't love her. I come here every day, have a bit of whiskey for courage, and then walk down the empty path to talk to her before heading home. His voice didn't change. The life had already been drained from his soul. On the other hand, I had never felt worse. My stomach was in knots, my eyes filled with tears, and my heart had never hurt so much. He wiped his eyes and carefully put everything away. I felt so sorry for him. He was about my age, and now he has to live with this for the rest of his life while raising his child. That's why you need to ask yourself, Johnny. Would you rather hold your wife or look at her name engraved on a stone? I know which option I'd choose. I just don't have that choice anymore. Merry Christmas, Johnny, and thanks for letting me bother you. He turned and headed for the door. Merry Christmas to you too, Robert. Maybe we'll see each other again. He didn't even look back. He just raised his hand and waved. I tried to swallow the last sip of whiskey, but the lump in my throat wouldn't let me. Tears were streaming down my face. I called the waitress over and started putting on my coat. She was young, and I hadn't seen her before. Handing her a 20, I asked, "Is this enough? Let me get you some change, sweetheart." "No, keep the change. Merry Christmas." "Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Merry Christmas to you too." She bent down and picked something up off the floor. "You must have dropped this." It was the photograph of the headstone. "No, the guy I was talking to must have dropped it." "Sweetheart, you're mistaken. I've been here since 4 o'clock, and there've only been a few people in. You've been alone the whole evening." "No, it was a guy about my age. His name's Robert." She touched my cheek and looked into my eyes. "Be strong, Johnny. You can do this. It's time for you to go home." She pushed the photo toward me. I looked at it and began to tremble. My head was spinning. My vision blurred. I looked again to make sure. Evie Pickwick, loving mother of John Samuel Pickwick. I rested my head on the table. Everything was spinning. This can't be real. I took a deep breath and stood up. I looked down, and instead of the photo in my hand, I saw a drink coaster. My $20 bill was still lying on the table. I looked around but couldn't see the waitress that I took my $20 to the bar. I tried to pay the waitress. "She can keep the change." "Well, son, I sent her home an hour ago. Let me get you your change." "Let her keep it. Merry Christmas." My head was spinning the entire evening. When I got to the car, I called home, but no one answered. I called Mary but there was no response. I barely remember driving home, except for chanting, "Please be okay. Please be okay. My son will not be raised the way I was." I pulled into the driveway and found the house dark. I called Mary Ann's parents. "Hi, Mom, it's me, John. Is Mary Ann there?" "She's busy. She's putting Robert to bed. Can I ask her to call you tomorrow? I'd really like to talk to her tonight." "She's busy tonight. She's with people who love her. Can you just leave her alone tonight? Please tell her that everything is forgiven and I want her back if she's willing. I'm home." The phone went silent. I walked into the house and headed straight for the bedroom closet. I pulled out the shoebox with my dad's things. I sat in the living room, opened the shoebox and found his wallet. I carefully took out 2 photos and a letter he had shown me before. The photos had yellowed a bit. I found a 3rd photo of all 3 of us. I was choking on my sobs. I kissed the photos. "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad." Another look in the wallet, and I was holding the photo of Evie's headstone. I trembled, trying to calm myself. Mary Ann's parents lived 2 hours away. I didn't know if she'd come home tonight or if she'd ever come back at all, that I was a wreck. I counted the chimes from 1 to 11. When the 12th chime rang, I heard the front door open. Mary and set down the stroller. She was crying. "Johnny, it's me." I raised my hand, signaling, "Stop." "I know. It was a mistake. I get it. It's over. We'll never talk about it again. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. I want you to come back if you'll have me." She rushed into my arms. "I love you. Never again. Promise." We held each other and kissed for a long time. "What's that on the table?" "It's my father's things. I felt really lonely today. I'll clean it up in the morning. Merry Christmas." "I don't have anything for you." "Merry Christmas. Getting you back is all I wanted." "I'm so sorry. I'll never forgive myself. I can't live without you." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I held her tightly. Tears started flowing again. "Mary, and it took me a few days to realize this, but I'd rather live with you than without you." The energy and passion we put into making love were unlike anything we'd ever experienced before. I don't think we fell asleep until 4 a.m. Robert's crying woke us up around 6 a.m. "Come on, get dressed. We need to get to Grandma's house." Grandma was sitting in the kitchen with a box of tissues. When she saw us, her eyes lit up like a 5-year-old seeing presents under the tree. She hugged Mary and then kissed her forehead several times. Mary and didn't know what to think. Grandma really needed this. "Johnny, you've made my Christmas." "I'm sorry I made you cry, Grandma." Grandma pressed her head against my chest and hugged me tightly. Later that morning, Mary and was standing in the kitchen, holding Robert in her arms and swaying like mothers do. Grandma picked up a photo of my dad, and I helped her hang it back on the wall. "When did you stop calling Dad Bobby?" Her head turned sharply toward me. There was a strange expression on her face, a mix of surprise and shock. "The first Christmas Eve after Evie died. He came home and announced that he would be Robert, and she would be Evelyn. Bobby and Evie were too painful for him. It was the strangest thing. And then he picked you up from the crib. Until that moment, it seemed like he was afraid to hold you. You slept in his arms all night. From that night on, he hugged you every chance he got. Are you okay, Johnny? You look a little pale." A cramp hit me, and I started trembling. "Just need a bit of strength. I'll be okay." "Johnny, Bobby would have been so proud of you. Maybe it didn't mean much to me yesterday morning, but today it did." Mary and I returned home at dusk. While she put Robert to bed, I started putting away my father's things. That I looked at the photos again and began to tremble as tears streamed down my face. That IT was her. She was the waitress. Charlie is gone. I no longer chase Mary and around the kitchen. Robert now has a little sister, Evelyn. In one of life's little quirks, she was born on the same day as her brother, 2 years apart. That I paid for a new headstone. Robert Bobby Pickwick. Evelyn, Evie Pickwick, together forever. Loving parents of John Samuel Pickwick. I tried to explain to Mary and what happened that evening, but she doesn't believe me. "I warned you, Johnny, not to drink on an empty stomach." I can't explain it. I just know that every time I find myself in a tough situation, I touch my cheek where she touched me and think of her words. "Be strong, Johnny, you can do this."